This week marks the 12-month anniversary of buying my Renault Zoe, so in this video I thought I'd give you my thoughts and experiences of my first year of EV ownership. As I did in my 6-month ownership review, I will first caveat this video by saying that this is not intended to be a full standalone review of the Zoe. Instead, this is reflections on my experience owning and living with the car, my first EV. This new video is not intended to be a replacement for the earlier one. That was a much more comprehensive walkthrough of my thoughts on a lot of aspects of the car. It is fairly cold here today, so I'll go into a little less depth this time around. If you're interested in more detail and you haven't seen that 6-month video yet, you might want to watch that after this one. I'll put a link to it on the end screen of this video, as well as in the description in case that's more convenient for you. Let's start by talking about comfort. This is an important subject to me as I have a back problem that has resulted in me having a lot of pain when driving certain cars. The Zoe has worked out very well. After an initial period of getting used to it, I'm now very comfortable when driving the car. The seats in the Zoe are quite basic. They have quite a simple structure, but for whatever reason, that works for me. One of the important aspects in me being comfortable is that the seat has limited front to back rake on the base. That helps me a lot. So other people with similar problems might get on with this better than you might expect just by looking at the seat. Manufacturers introduced anti-submarining seats to their cars after studies showed that it was possible to slide under the seatbelts in an accident, and that doing so was causing people leg and pelvis injuries. Anti-submarining seats are therefore important for safety, but unfortunately sitting on a raked seat, one form of anti-submarining design, aggravates one of the joints in my back, so it gives me a lot of trouble, unfortunately. The Zoe seats do have some rake, but not as much as other cars, so it might be a good compromise for other people with a similar problem to mine. The driving experience of owning an EV has been great. I like the EV drivetrain because it offers a lot of torque as well as power, which means it's very quick to accelerate. That means I can get myself out of trouble, for example, if I accidentally put myself in the wrong lane at a junction. I also like the feeling of regenerative braking. Having the car slow down when I lift off the accelerator gives me confidence that I am in control of it. What is a slight shame is that the car doesn't offer full one-pedal driving. The Zoe will not come to a complete stop on its own. You do still need to press the brake pedal to come to a standstill at a junction. I think manufacturers might be worried about people forgetting that the car will move forward if you press the accelerator if they didn't press the brake to begin with, and getting in an accident. So in reality, there seem to be very few cars that offer full one-pedal driving. The good news is that the lack of one-pedal driving has not been annoying, so I think the design is okay. I should say that the Zoe does offer auto hold, which you turn on and off by pressing a button down near the handbrake if you want it. So it will stay still once stopped if that is your preference. The other thing I like is the level of refinement that the Zoe offers. It is, relatively speaking, a budget car, yet it offers levels of quiet and smoothness that you would normally attribute to a more luxurious car. I really like that. I've only really had one significant problem with the car in the 12 months. And that's other people driving into it, unfortunately. I've had 2 little parking incidents caused by other drivers in the last couple of months. At least I think the second will have been in a car park. I actually have no idea where it happened. I feel quite unlucky for that to have happened twice in a year, indeed in a couple of months, as I mentioned. Having said that, I'm extremely lucky that the damage has been so minor in each case, so I can't really complain too much. But everyone, please be careful in car parks, especially near my car. Things which I mentioned in the 6-month update that have continued to be problematic include that the sat-nav is continuing to get slower to search for results, which can be quite frustrating. And while talking about the sat-nav, I should say that trying to use the voice recognition for navigation seems pointless. Voice recognition fails to recognise my voice. Most of the time, I can't get navigating by voice to select a useful destination no matter what I try. However, the Zoe does support both Android Auto and Apple CarPlay, although both only in wired form. I can therefore switch to use one of those if I want to. I might retry those external options a bit more this year. I have tried them before, but decided to persist with the built-in nav to begin with. I really like the integration of the inbuilt system once the destination has been chosen. The other option I will try to use more often is sending a route to the car from the app. That should avoid most of the issues as well. It's only the search function that is really a problem. And even then, it's okay if I avoid voice recognition. It's just that it could be better. In particular, it could be faster. In terms of the assistance features, I have tried Lane Keep Assist a few more times since the 6-month update, and each time has been a disappointment. Therefore, I continue to use Lane Departure Warning almost exclusively, as that works really well. The other automated feature that I have had problems with and continue to have problems with is the auto lights. There have been a few more instances where the high beam hasn't come on, which is a bit frustrating, but it's generally not been a main problem. I continue to appreciate how the settings of the car persist between drives. I watch reviews of other cars and think how annoying it must be for the assistance features to change back to default settings each time you switch the car off. By the sound of it, there might be some legislation that requires manufacturers to do this. If that's the case, that seems like a mistake to me. I get the point of encouraging people to use safety features, particularly at first when it's very easy to switch to default conditions that you've known from previous cars. But the problem is that some of these features just don't work very well in some cars, so re-enabling them is just a bit daft in my opinion. The speed recognition system continues to make some mistakes occasionally. On New Year's Eve, I experienced a really odd bug where the car suddenly thought the national speed limit was 40 miles per hour. Each time it saw the national speed limit sign and recognised it, it set the dash display to 40 as the top speed that should be done. This happened through multiple speed limit changes, so it wasn't a one-off. Eventually I pulled over, turned the car off and on again, and also rebooted the media system, after which the fault cleared. Winter driving is slightly less enjoyable in a couple of regards. I really like the cabin preheating from the app. That's really comfortable, makes the car warm before I use it, which is great. However, having less regenerative braking is a shame. It's something you need to be slightly aware of. The car will brake a bit less than you might have got used to in the summer months. However, it's a slow change across several months, so I do not feel it to be unsafe. The reduced range in cold conditions isn't ideal. Although it's not the end of the world, it just means a bit more public charging in the winter. I have a few more journeys where I need a bit of a top-up in order to be able to make it home in the winter period. And on the subject of public charging, that's all been fine recently. I took the car on the ferry to the Isle of Wight for a holiday in late summer, which went well. I like staying in West Wight, where it's a bit less built up, but that means less charging infrastructure. The feeling of being on an island with limited infrastructure was at first a slight concern. However, the DC rapid charger in Yarmouth worked without a hitch, and there were plenty of options further east if I had needed them. The island is not large, so there was never really any risk of having a problem. Most of my charging experiences have gone flawlessly. There was one motorway services where I couldn't immediately get on a charger, But there were other options later in the journey, so I simply moved on after the break I was having and charged later in the day. I was only going to charge because I wanted a comfort break, not because I needed to charge at that point. So it didn't cause an issue. I just charged on the journey back rather than on that stop for a comfort break. The Renault Zoe is not a fast charging car. The maximum theoretical DC rapid charging speed is limited to 43 kilowatts, probably because of design choices early in the car's life, as I've discussed in other videos. However, most of my stops are very short anyway, because I just need a little more charge to get home in most circumstances. Indeed, because I only need a little bit, I have started using a bit of a charging hack. You see, the Renault Zoe is unusual in that it AC charges much more quickly than most other cars. That means I can use high power AC chargers where they exist, 22 kilowatt or 43 kilowatt units. That allows me to leave DC rapid chargers free for other people to use, with the little Brucey bonus that AC charging is usually cheaper, at least when on a dedicated AC device, so I save some money into the bargain. Furthermore, I don't feel rushed to get back to the car to stop the charge before I'm ready to get driving again. That could happen when using DC rapid charging, because the Zoe doesn't support setting a charge limit either for DC or AC charging. Charging slower, therefore, happens to fit my brake lengths in many instances. The price difference between DC rapid charging and AC charging can be quite large. With GridServe, for example, charging on a DC rapid charger is now 79 pence per kilowatt hour. However, charging on a standalone AC charge point is only 49 pence per kilowatt hour, 38% cheaper. Be careful though, this only applies to standalone AC charge points and not AC connectors on triple chargers. Those are devices which offer DC rapid charging as well as AC charging. I remain impressed at how fast charging networks are expanding. There have been a huge number of new chargers go in 2023. Checking the stats, ZapMap says that there has been a 45% increase in the number of charging devices in the last year, which is extraordinary. We've also had that new legislation come into force in the UK that I discussed in last week's video, which has to be good news as well. Whilst many of the changes are not enforceable for another 12 months, I am sure that networks will make changes for the better in advance of that deadline. The one area in which public charging has been a disappointment this year is that prices have not fallen as I had hoped. Indeed, GridServe have increased their prices twice in the last year, which was really a disappointing thing to see. We need to see prices start to come down now that the huge peak in the price of electricity during the energy crisis has abated. Instead, we seem to be having to pay for the expansion of the network, rather than that being financed over a longer period through private equity. I certainly hope the price of public charging starts to reduce again in 2024. People who do not have home charging should not be penalised by this level of pricing. The network operators' costs should be falling again as we come off the absurd electricity price peaks we saw at the start of the energy crisis, and by now they should all but have recouped any losses they made during that period. If pricing doesn't reduce, we risk slowing the transition and hurting the market. Operators, please get onto that for us. One ray of hope in the public charging space is that Tesla are continuing to keep their pricing much lower than other operators, showing that it is possible. They are also opening up more of their sites to the general public, so the other networks need to start to price match, or risk becoming irrelevant. So, as I look back, how has the year been? Well, the answer is that it's been really great. I've been very comfortable in the car, which is very good news for me. Ownership has been easy. Public charging experiences have been positive. To be fair, most of my charging has been at home, which couldn't be simpler. Those times I've used the public charging network, it has gone well. I did have a couple of failed charges in the first 6 months of ownership, but they were all easily fixed by moving to another charger on the same site. That's the benefit of heading to sites with more than a single charger. I still own another car, an old Smart 4.2 that has appeared in some of my videos. I mainly keep that for sentimental reasons, although it has been useful for some of the content that I've created. Make no mistake though, this, the EV, is the car that I use. I take the Smart out for an occasional drive to keep it running. In my experience, cars do not like sitting completely unused. However, I much prefer the Zoe, and I've not been tempted to use the Smart instead for anything. Not even long journeys, as some EV doubters might expect. To me, the Zoe ZE50 seems to offer a lot of EV for the money on the second-hand market, especially here in the UK. And other people clearly seem to think so as well, as both Gary Martin from the channel Modern Heroes and Jonathan Porterfield from Eco Cars have both bought themselves one recently. I would recommend the Zoe to people. It's well worth considering. What I would say is that you should make sure that you're comfortable with the safety rating of the car. I did a video on that very topic, which I will also link from the end screen of this one and in the description. That's a video I'm very proud of, as I think I managed to get to the bottom of the issue in a way that other people didn't quite achieve. Have a watch of that deep dive to understand it more if you're interested in that subject. My position is that I would of course prefer the car had a higher NCAP safety score. However, I'm comfortable that I understand why the score came out as low as it did, and that it isn't right for most Zoes. Therefore, I'm okay continuing to own and drive mine based on that understanding. The Zoe is staying in the fleet, and eventually the Smart will get sold, so that the ZE50 is my only car. EV ownership is definitely the way forward for me, and I think you should start considering it as well. Well, that's it for another video. Thanks again for joining me. Your questions and comments are most welcome in the section below. If you've got a Zoe, how are you getting on with yours? And do you think I've missed anything in my thoughts in my 12-month review? If you're looking for a Zoe, I'd be interested in that as well. If you've liked the video, then it's a help to me if you click the thumbs up button. That tells YouTube that you've enjoyed it, and YouTube may promote it to other people who may also enjoy it. And of course, click subscribe if you want to see more. Thanks.